Hey, this is the Booth Bay Region Offshore Wind Benefits Group meeting on June 1st. It's a really lovely day, and we don't have a lot of people here, but we do have a few people both in person and on Zoom. So Rob, I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Thank you, Nell. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rob Trotta, and I am the project director for New England Aquaventus.
Great, thank you, Rob. Earl?
I'm Earl Moore. I'm just a resident of Booth Bay. I'm a ship's captain and just interested in what you have to say, Rob.
Okay.
Noelle Twig, also Booth Bay resident. Same, it's my first meeting, but I've been kind of following along in the past articles, and really we're here for kind of an update and just to hear what's going on.
Great. Hi, I'm Allison Evans. I am a Booth Bay Harbor resident.
And I'm Nell Tharp, Booth Bay resident and cheerful host or convener of this group somehow. It was not my intent originally. So Rob, since we have new people here, will you just give a brief overview of the project and where it is at the present moment?
Sure, of course. So good to see, always good to see new people. So welcome. You know, and we've been holding this, we've been carrying this for, I'm trying to remember exactly when we started now, this, I'll say it was October. Was that October?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Well, nonetheless,
I can't remember.
Yes, it's been a while. So what we've been, how we've been updating, we've been using this was the platform, initially it was the platform to get feedback on a community benefits agreement, right? So one of the things that the project, in dealing with and understanding that this is where we're proposing to come to shore, was that there would be a temporary negative impact, on the residents, with the coming ashore, with the potential, the time during construction, in which it was put in the state highway, and for the approximately 3.2 miles to the point of interconnection. And so what we thought it was good. It was the right move was to go into the community and then offer up the potential for community benefits. And so we've went for that discussion for a while, and then we said that we actually we didn't want to put a cap on it. We just didn't want to artificially put any numbers, any limitations to it. But then we ended up, we really needed that because we got to the point of our discussions with the communities, that understanding what are we really talking about here. And at that point, the project offered up a community benefits of $1 million to be used with only one stipulation, that there be a project or projects that would be used for would be support in health and safety within the communities. So there's and then Nell and the team did an awful lot of work with pulling together criteria and analysis and review, and I know that's all been posted, it's all been shared, I know it's all been put out through the through the select boards, through presentations, through that. And that's got us to the point, I believe, that's now with the select boards that are there to how they want to progress. There's a couple key points to how they might want to progress. Will it be as one community benefits agreement? Will it be two community benefits agreement? How type of shape or form will this take? There's a key point that I make through this that I want to make sure I reiterate now is that the timing of this is a very important part. And I know it was back in the article that was published again, and it really hasn't changed much. But the timing is that we're continue to work through some really fundamental aspects of the project. If you think about it, you can divide it into two key aspects. There's number one, the design work and the floating foundation, the Venturis Foundation from the University of Maine that is being utilized in the project. There's the engineering, and then how would we think that it will react, in the Gulf of Maine, and is it suitable for the conditions out there? So an awful lot of engineering that was supported by the Department of Energy, by the state, by the University of Maine, and by the project. We've really come to the understanding that the risks around whether the Volturnus Foundation will do what it says on the can, if you will, has really been greatly reduced over the years. So we're really at a point that we're very confident with the design. That's great, but now you need to take it to the next step, which is, okay, you have a design, but now you need to find a way to then to fabricate it, right? So you think about it, we have a foundation, it's a concrete hull. So you need to fabricate it. You need to fabricate it in a location that it could be also then assembled, and then that it needs to be potentially launched. And then you need to prop a turbine, on top of it.
Right.
So initially, when this project started, it was a smaller 6 megawatt turbine. In fact, there was supposed to be two, at the time. And the mechanics of doing those three things, fabricating, assembling, and putting turbine on, was, well, a lot easier. But over time, not by the choice of the project or not by the choice of University of Maine, technology continued to evolve. Those turbines are no longer available. You just can't get it. So they've gotten bigger. And so now we're at an 11 megawatt turbine. And that 11 megawatt turbine has made it more complex to fabricate, assemble, and then put a turbine on it. So we're looking at this, and we have then the critical focus of the project has and continues to be those three pieces. How are we going to fabricate it? Working, spending resources and time and development dollars, on that. Number two, when we fabricate it, how is it going to be assembled? Are there different ways that we're going to float it when we're assembling it? Is it going to be on a dock? Is it going to be on a barge? There's multiple different aspects of ways which this could happen. So that is really the critical stage. That's where we've been for several months. And that is where we believe that we will be for several months to come. We are targeting, to be late in this year, fourth quarter, October, November, December period of this year, that we feel that we're going to be in a position, that to understand more so about answering those key questions. What does that then mean? Then we still need to permit the facility. Okay. So when you define what you're going to do and where you're going to do it, you then need to go through that lengthy process to obtain all the permits to do that.
So if I may interrupt, Rob, you're talking about permitting the facility where it would be manufactured, not permitting the turbine itself.
Both now. So,
okay.
You have both that need to be done. They have a state process, the state 404 process was put in place actually for this project, the approval review. So you're going to need to now then, unfortunately, what we're seeing is that there's very few, and this is very common within the offshore industry at this time, is that the port facilities don't exist to support these types of projects. So there's highly likely going to be some upgrades or some work done through this. And there's been a lot in the press, about the Maine DOT, and the options and review and things they're doing. This is more in line for the research array, but we still have to try to tackle these things now for the demonstration project. So what does that mean? What's the headline? Well, the headline to that, is that we, reasonably, once these decisions about where we believe it could be, then we need to consult with the communities. We need to talk more about the routes, right? There's a lot of things that still need to be brought forward, through that point. So all these dialogues, all these public meetings, these all need to happen. We need to get input because this is the way we believe that it could be delivered. Just doesn't mean it happens. So we're going to need more feedback. There's going to be more input, into what we found in our conclusions. And then we need to get to the point of actually executing. Our current understanding that if things are flexible, dynamic, I should say, at this stage, is that we don't envision that we would be in the point that this would actually be in the water and operational until 2026, 2027. 3-4 years still kind of out from where we are now with approximately. So there's still a lot to be done. Unfortunately, the good news is that from a community benefits perspective, there's a couple pieces here that I think are really critical. The first one is that we're obligated. We've made the commitments with the projects whether the communities don't need to come up with a solid or what they want to be done, at that point, in that late this year, in order to make it happen. Now, coordination, are there some potentials and the overlap of how our planning is? I think it'd be really good that we're talking and understanding where the communities want to go, when we have that dialogue late in this year, early in 2024. But you're not at risk of losing anything, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
The commitment is there. We're going to move forward. The how is kind of, still yet to be worked through. My apologies. No, I'm not sure if that was more than that was necessary, but I was trying to stay on enough information to give people an understanding kind of where we are. And that was covering also from the community benefits and also kind of the project and key things people want to know when they're going to hear more.
Do you mind if I ask a couple
No.
clarifying questions, just and bear with me, because I know you've
Please.
probably all been to these meetings before. So it sounds like there's an if, that this is maybe not gonna happen, or is this something that's going to happen, and we are therefore kind of trying to find community benefits in support of that? Or is there still a potential that it's not? And I'll preface that by saying, part of the reason I was thinking about that is I was reading the news today, and one of the articles that caught my eye was talking about the Commonwealth Wind Project in Massachusetts, and that was just put on hold because it was deemed not financially viable without amendments, I think, to the purchase agreement. And I'm wondering,
Yes.
are we going to be in a similar situation down the road where we're also going to have to revisit the agreements that have been made thus far as well?
Yeah, that is a great question, and the industry. Let me start by answering it. Nothing is guaranteed into that. So it is still that uncertainty does exist, and you point to a really very important point, is that the industry, offshore wind, is experiencing this from supply chain issues, from commodity issues, from inflation, that working within the existing power purchase agreement parameters that were established, is becoming even more trying, right? So one of the key reasons that we're spending so much time and resource and into it at this stage is that we're trying to find the least cost methods to do this. I can't just say I found a way, so let's go. It has to be least cost, and it has to work within the parameters that were established by the legislation that created this project.
And this is just for one test project. And the reason I'm asking this is that one of the other articles that caught my eye today was from CNN. It was just about 2 weeks ago. And it was specifically, the article started by talking about this project. So in that's the specific location, but it referred to it as one of 10 that were going to happen. So I wasn't sure if you had any clarification about that.
Sure. So we have to put in context that there's two projects that we're talking about here. Okay. Well, right now we're talking about, there are two projects in play by the state of Maine, right? So the state of Maine roadmap for offshore wind, their projection was to say, what they say is 1 to 10 to 100, right? And this is the room. So you do 1 to demonstrate the technology, and that's the project we're talking about here now. Right, and that is off Monhegan and with landfall in Boothbay Harbor, right? Single project, single turbine. Then, the next step is the array. So let's research and let's understand the impact that it has, within the fisheries, et cetera, environment with the 10 turbines. That is still being done by the same JV joint venture that I'm part of. That is doing the single turbine, but it's at a different location. And that, okay.
And that one's in federal waters, correct?
And that is exactly no. That is in federal waters. So it's easy to, think about that they're being combined. Either where is it, or it's just one and then there's going to be 9, or how does this going to play? It's a very common. It's a good question. you know, and to be clear, these are two distinct different projects.
So we've had a number of other people join us. Let's just stop and let people introduce themselves, please. So go right ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name's Abby Jones and I live in East Boothbay and I work at the Bigelow Laboratory for Ocean Sciences. Currently.
My name is Bill Greener, and I live in Boothbay Harbor on Atlantic Avenue, kitty corner from Browns. And you can see my T-shirt. I was at the State House on May 18th when NRCM and actually the Environmental Priorities Commission Coalition, EPC, had a conservation lobby day. So that's why I got the shirt. And I'm a member of NRCM and MECV and MECA, which is the main conservation voters and main conservation association. And I'm just generally concerned about our climate, our planet. And also, from what I've heard and everything like that, I believe that the offshore wind initiative is a good one for me. And there's also a bill coming up, that'll be 1895, which will be basically a procurement bill so that Maine can jump on the wagon, so to speak. I guess the word is ending early. And also what I would say about the offshore wind, as I understand it, they are to be free floating platforms with wind turbines on them. And so therefore there will be not any pipe, whatever, foundations going down nor ropes. So that at least the, I'm sorry?
That there will be ways that it has to be anchored to the ocean floor. They're not gonna.
Is that right? I don't know that code totally completely, so anyway. But the other thing I feel is important about it, at least from what I've been told, it should bring jobs, training and other things to the state of Maine.
My name is Barbara Fritz. I've been following the development of this for quite a while through my daughter-in-law, and reading about it in the paper, and decided to come and see for myself what's going on here, because not everything makes the papers.
That's true.
That's fair,
So
Barbara.
just to clarify about what this group is about, this is
Yes.
a community group
Yes.
that it has come together to help coordinate between New England Aquaventus with what they've offered and the two towns to come up with whatever project will benefit the towns. So we have not taken a position one way or the other. We're neutral about the wind farm. Everybody gets to have, or the demonstration project. Everybody gets to have their own opinion. When we come together, it's to get updates about where the project is, because obviously we don't get a community benefit if for some reason the project changed and it wasn't going to happen. But assuming that we do get a community benefit, then we want the community to have a voice in how that benefit gets applied to the communities that we live in, and not to have the towns independently make a decision. We want to have it be community driven. So that's why we put this group together. And one last introduction, please.
Roger Matthews, East Boothbay and Boothbay Harbor.
Great. Okay, so do we have any update from Boothbay Harbor with the new select board?
Well, I've given everybody information. I give them links to the Zoom. And I do know that we are on, we can, for both towns, and we are now able to bring this, and if there's any new updates, we can bring it up as old news.
Okay,
So that's good.
so Dale Harmon is the selectman from Boothbay who will be attending the meetings. He came last time, Rob, and you weren't able to be here. And this time he's working. So he emailed and said he wasn't able to attend. So we do want to have it something that comes before the select boards on a recurring basis so that when it's time to act, we'll be able to act. The community group did collect ideas for what the benefits might be, and we have them kind of laid out in a matrix. Some of it is based on cost, some of it is based on, there's a whole bunch of things that are on there. But ultimately the towns will decide. And so it's up to the communities to be engaged with the towns to say, hey, this is what we want. And one of the questions that came up last time, the last meeting, was about whether there was an existing project that was underfunded that needed completion, as opposed to doing all the background work for a new project. And so that's still out there in the wings. We'll have to take that up with the towns. So other questions that people have about the demonstration project?
Okay.
Or about the whole?
So sort of how long has the group been meeting?
Yeah, I'm not a good historian. I use my notes for that and I can't look them up while I'm here.
A lot of us are new today. March.
Yes,
Okay.
March of last year. Is that right? But then.
probably, at least. At least,
At least it's this, that sounds about right. you know.
okay.
March 22nd. And then there's a
Ah.
separate public meeting to talk about just the project overall.
Nope. Nope, there hasn't, I mean, there were public meetings in the very beginning. That was a long time ago, before you were visible, Rob. There was a couple public meetings here about the project itself.
No, that's helpful, as you were saying, like, not everything makes the paper, or I missed so much of it, so.
Yeah, you have to look at
Yeah.
the right edition. So there were public meetings about the route. When the groundwork was being done to see what might be a feasible route. So if we could talk about where the cable is going to go, Rob, in terms of that it will be in the utility right of way.
Yes. Yep. In the utility right away with an understanding that at the end it will be within the main DOT right away, the entire, once it leaves, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Pardon me, I'm sorry.
Yep,
Once it leaves Bigelow Labs, so sorry.
Yeah.
My allergies have been.
Green light.
okay,
Everything gets.
But there's a good amount of uncertainties still. My apologies. Once it leaves the Bigelow Lab property, it would be through on to state highway, and the state highway, our intent, within that is to try to have minimum impact and anything that's not within the road, right? And that's the intent. Now, there's a very fair question that we still need to address through the project as to, okay, well, where does it go on one side? Where does it go? How does it do it back and forth across the road? That is something that needs to be still approved for the reviewed with a main DOT. But the intent is not to the extent we necessary or not required, that we want to stay within that right away. The whole route.
Are you guys committed to putting it in the road in a way that we can still get sewage out to East Booth Bay?
Yeah. Yes. So the answer to that, and I had the statistics a couple. This was brought up as to would there still be sufficient, space within the roadway for other utilities, outside of this cable, and I had this stat. The short answer was the conclusion was yes, that there's the width of the right of way, I think it was I want to say was 78, 80 feet. It's very wide, and the lack of utilities that are utilizing it today,
Right.
that additional utilities within that would not be problematic.
yeah, and if we could ask that when the plan gets developed, that it is shared with the sewer district for review and comment, that would be, something we have requested, and we would have that expectation.
Of course, no, of course.
Yes, just need to say it. We'll
And this-
reiterate it. You'll hear it again, I'm sure, Rob.
Yes, yeah, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had
Yeah.
a question, sir?
Oh, I'm not, I was just, wasn't sure who Rob was, I apologize.
Oh, yes, I apologize. Yes, Rob, if you would just introduce yourself again for the newcomers. Thank you very much.
Sure, of course, of course. Hi, my name is Rob Trotta, and I am the project director for the New England Aquaventus project. So I oversee scope, schedule, budget for the project.
So other questions that people have?
Is the $1 million you mentioned, is that pretty comparable with what other towns are seeing? Or is that like a standard amount that communities usually get?
Yeah, that's a good question. And when we came up, we were trying to, there is no you think the size of the project, the impact, we're not trying to belittle that there'll be some impact. We're accepting that fact, but the fact that it'll be the construction and then we'll put in rotors. We were trying to come up with a number that we thought was enough to have an impact, and it was suitable for the type of impact that we were having. There really is, it's hard being a single wind turbine demonstration project. They're just, that doesn't really exist. So it's nothing comparable, and then you got to think that it should be comparable to the size of the project and the impact, right? Because it needs to be, the project needs to be able to support it.
Other thoughts about what potential benefits? Some of the things that we have talked about were sidewalks and bike paths. So the cable will come to the electric substation at the corner of 96 and 27. So right across from Hannaford.
Yeah.
And we had talked with DOT about the potential for doing a walking bike path it'll be paved, but not with curbing, so that it was the least expensive possible. And they had suggestions for bringing it all the way to Bigelow with crosswalks, with speed management along there. So that was one possible thing. Other things that we talked about were bringing the sewer line to East Booth Bay. That has a very hefty price tag, probably is not going to be feasible unless there were significant outside funds available. DOT for the first, what I had said first, does have some community funds, so there would be some potential matching that's based on the income of the community. So they said it would probably be somewhere 30–40% instead of higher. We talked about something to help the police with recruitment and retention. We talked about infrastructure in the school to improve health and safety of the schools, because we know the schools are having some issues. What else was on the list, Allison? I'm going by my memory, and
Yeah, I
it's,
think those are the big ones. Those are the ones that kind of made it through all of that.
yeah.
We talked about, upgrading our electric, our substation also as
Yeah,
part of this.
But that is part of it, right, Rob? Upgrading the substation is part of the project.
So that'll be a project cost, exactly. I think that was one of those thinking, what can we do to increase the integrity, of the local grid, if you will, CMP, and that the project is being studied, for its impact, and any upgrades or anything needs to happen to keep the same reliability that you all have now, needs to be maintained, and that is already a cost that would be borne by the project.
Water out to a lot of this.
Oh, yeah, and we had talked about year-round water to some of people along the route. We're really focused about projects that are in the same route, so when the road is, or the area is dug up, using the disruption to its best advantage, and getting year-round water to people who have saltwater intrusion into their wells in particular. So Yeah, trying to think if there's anything else. So, the door is still open for any suggestions, because those suggestions will go to the two towns and go to their select boards. And what we're trying to facilitate is to have select people from both towns attend these meetings so that there can be a discussion, so that we know whether there's a single project that both towns will sign on to, or whether there'll be two different projects, one for each town, or whether there's some other combination that we haven't yet thought of. That the towns are always very busy with their town municipal business. And so this has been kind of at the bottom of the pile, because there hasn't been a lot of forward movement, even though it is moving incrementally. And so, we decided we want to keep these meetings going, to keep the community informed, and to gently apply pressure to the municipalities, so that they will be poised and ready to move forward when the decision is made to go forward with this and the permits are in place and they say, yes, we're gonna have the funds for you.
So were you saying earlier that the hope was to have something to present to the selectmen by the end of the year? Is that?
No, Rob, you were saying,
Yeah, so, yeah, thank you. To clarify, is that we were targeting by the end of the year to be in a position that all of these key things that we talked about, the fabrication, the assembly, there's how that would all come together, that'd be something that we would be in a position to bring forward at that point, by the end of the year. That would really kind of, that is the reboot, if you will, of then consultations, permitting work, other things that need to happen, going to that point forward. So you're not going to, outside of these meetings, which are great, I think a great platform, we're not expecting to see an awful lot of updates, or to say material change of defining things happening until that point.
okay, and at that point, Maine Aquaventus would convene public meetings to provide that information. And that would be your responsibility, or your organization's responsibility. And would the decision about the route be integral to that information?
Most definitely, no.
Okay.
Most definitely, yes. This is, I see, whether it be one or a series, this will really, like I say, really kind of, reboot, a lot of the discussions and feedback, but to how we're going to progress.
Okay.
So I feel like with the route, I mean, if it is gonna be going along the public utilities, the utilities route, I mean, if that's where it has to go, then the route is already pretty much defined, right? I mean, if it's coming from Bigelow, we know it's gotta go through the road in East Blue Bay and go out. So I mean, I don't understand why we can't have that answer yet, like, cause where else is there a right of way for that stuff?
But it's not just that it's in the right of way, it has to be mapped exactly where in the right of way it is. And so that will depend on what exists already. And what, go ahead, Rob, the geology of it is.
Exactly. That's the geotech work, which is taking the samples of the area, how the surveys relate, to landowners, in their land, and then how the DOT wants it to go. So I think it's safe to say that we're pretty sure that we all understand the route itself, but I think, but it's what make it a meaningful next level of discussion will be, this is where the feedback that we receive from the agencies and from all our field work, to truly put something out there and not just a big line. Yeah. To really have comments back.
The information be finalized and available before we were to make a recommendation about what public benefits would be or would like to see.
I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you say it?
Yeah.
That's something, it sounds like that's still in play. You're still trying to figure out the details around that. And since the benefits are tied to kind of the route, is that something we could we would know like what's been finalized, what's been decided before we decide on what community benefit we're interested in? Or is that?
It's possible. I mean, it's possible. And so Rob, when you said, you think we all pretty much know what the route's gonna be, does that mean it's gonna be on Route 96? On the state route?
Yes,
And not go down Murray Hill or any of those side roads that,
exactly. That was
Okay.
the initial feedback that was received for that first public meeting. I think that we took that all to heart, and that is the route that's been discussed, continues to be discussed, with the main DOT.
okay, great, thank you.
And being new to this conversation, are these lines going to be above ground or underground?
Buried in the road.
Yes, and that's part of what the disruption is.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
will, and that's why, in our internal discussions with the small group, we have talked about the bike path and the walking path, because if the road is disrupted, seems like that's an easy. And the DOT was very enthusiastic about that. So, low hanging fruit within the budget, along the route, it benefits both towns, both locals and tourists. So there were a lot of positives about that.
And I'm trying to picture, would any above ground wires be dead at the same time put underground?
No,
No.
no,
So
that
we
is
have
not
two-
the intent.
Two.
They're completely separate.
It's proprietary. It's so.
If you think about it, where the cable single
Yes,
would make landfall, it will be buried. It will make landfall, be buried. It will be in a vault, which would then be going to a switch yard where it is then stepped up. It changes the voltage from 66 kV to 34.5 kV, and then it takes the journey, to the point of interconnection, all underground.
okay.
What's the diameter of the cable?
The diameter of the cable is roughly 3.5 inches or so. This is a 34.5 kV cable.
So what,
This is what
I didn't hear the number, Rob. What size?
it's approximately 3.5, 4 inches. Let me
3 inches?
no, it's about just under 3, about 2.5 inches. Yeah, this is what you could expect that would be buried in the road.
And
That
how-
This is
cable's
a
gonna run from Monhegan to land just along the bottom someplace?
that's a 66 kV, and that's around 6 inches, roughly 6 inches diameter cable. Yep. That also, you have to understand, that is a dynamic cable that has different protections, around it, because it's a marine cable. Yeah. Whereas this doesn't require that, and it's a different voltage.
Is there a route for that cable that's been planned? To run from Monhegan to, where does that make landfall?
So the intent of that landfall will make landfall, excuse me, at Bigelow Labs.
Bigelow Labs in West Booth Bay Harbor, or Bigelow Labs on the Damascotta River?
on the Damascotta,
In Damascus.
yeah.
Good questions.
Rob, it's my understanding that trench is to be approximately 36 by 36. Is that,
The trench, I'm sorry.
for the
So
leg of the cable, isn't it 3 feet deep?
yes, it's approximately 3 feet. Yeah.
So that's why where it is in that right of way makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Because if
We
it
really
has
want to
go
limit
from
any
one side of the road
disturbance.
to the other. Sorry,
Yeah.
Rob, go ahead.
No. Yes, that's why it is important, and I don't want to we really want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to minimize any disruption or any residents along the way. It's really important, so.
So thinking about it from the community benefits perspective, as opposed to the project. Excuse me. and coming back to your question about the timing of it, you know, really, we would like to see the towns have a preliminary idea of either their top two projects and agreements between the towns by the time you start or finish your fall public meetings. Is that reasonable? We need to carry this information back to the towns.
Yes, yeah. I would say, you know, this is, you got to understand that the permitting process and consultation process, you know, is a lengthy process as
Okay.
well. So lengthy, 9 months to a year of these meetings, consultations, information, right? So there's going to be multiple, it's not, it'll be more than a single point on a calendar. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say, but to answer your question specifically, Nell, I would say that is reasonable. But the towns, you know, may get to a point in which they would just feel that they'd rather see it play out a little bit more, or for whatever reason, and they'd rather do an agreement that could obligates the project, but it doesn't pinpoint the actual benefit yet, you know.
Yeah.
And we'll be open to whatever we think is what is best to bring forward by your select boards. Yeah.
Okay.
And by your community input.
Well, and I'm just thinking from a strategic perspective, you know, we're going to advertise the July meeting because first of all, it's off of our usual calendar. It's what did we figure out?
20th.
July 20th. So that we could try and have summer people who own property, so that it's not just residents, it's anyone who would be impacted. And get their input, because by the time Aquaventus comes back in the fall with public meetings, many of those people won't be here. And so we wanted to have the opportunity for people to have a voice as soon as possible. And then the whole idea that you're going to be hosting these public informational sessions will hopefully revitalize the interest. And if the towns are prepared to say, here's what we're thinking, then it's a prime opportunity to find out if people have other ideas that they want to bring to the table. So, you know, from our perspective as a group trying to be strategic, the timing makes a difference. So that's helpful information for us to have. Any other questions, thoughts? Go ahead.
Oh, I guess so. Could Rob tell me a little bit more about Person? I'm not even familiar with you. I apologize. I saw it in the paper and that's all.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear more about.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize then. I see. I saw it in the paper and didn't even register.
Yeah, it's
No, this is very good, and I have no problem with it. So it is New England Aquaventus, that sometimes you see as NEAV as the acronym, right? You know, and that name was given to the project actually by the University of Maine. From a very short history of this, you may recall it was the University of Maine that started the project. It was University of Maine that initiated the development of the project. Then it got to the point where they're very, very, very good at what they do in their engineering program, you know, but they find out that they needed some more assistance, you know, to actually do the development and then the production of that unit. And that's where then the joint venture between RWE and Diamond Offshore Wind, of which I'm an employee of, to see, came in to actually do the development work in conjunction with the input very closely with the university, right? Then we'll also construct it and then we'll also operate it.
So
as compared to Mira,
are you a corporation or a nonprofit?
we are not a nonprofit organization.
Profit corporation that can create production facilities and build and hire people.
This is what we do.
Plus coordinating with University of Maine and all of the different parts that need to be get together.
Exactly.
Super project manager that's doing that.
So you could, for all intents and purposes, as the project director, I will take the project to construction.
Okay,
And for what it's worth, I have a very long history in delivering utility scale energy facilities, from conventional power plants through renewables to offshore wind. So this is what I do, if you will. Then at that point of financial investment decision, all right, a couple of years away, when I said the actual commitment is there, we did it all, brought it all together, then I would then transition that over to a construction manager who would then be accountable for building it.
Right. So let me ask another clarifying question, Rob. When the towns are working on the benefits agreement, the negotiations would be with you as the representative of NEAV, or would it be with someone else?
The intent, and the strong intent, is that it will be me.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I mean, I understand it. I have the vested interest in it, and I've been part of these dialogues since I came to
Right.
it over. And that's the best view for this. Yeah. We
Okay.
believe.
Yep. So, I mean, just the timing of everything again, want to have something in place, even if the towns weren't ready to go forward, we put the agreement in place. And be ready to do that.
And we are prepared to take any steps at the pace in which the communities want to. And I think that was really important. I don't know if some might have missed it in the beginning when I stated that there's no risk of not having a benefit here.
Okay.
There's no, it doesn't expire, at a certain date.
Right,
We will do it, wherever you all are and whatever timing, we'll make it work.
Okay.
How long does the test project last? Is it a 10-year or is it like 30 years? That was short, the duration.
Good question. 25 years.
25 years.
Yeah.
Have you seen scenarios with other towns where there's the initial investment, $1 million or what have you, and then continued support during the life of the project? Or is it really a one and done sort of thing?
So good question. And I think it does go back to kind of thing where you said initially, the impact and the size, right? So I've worked on projects where the project was in a community, in the community onshore, right? And there was a sizable, whether a conventional power plant or a large or a utility scale wind farm, in a township or multiple townships. And it's not uncommon, for there to be annual kind of contributions for that. We are not at that scale. We are a single small project, and the impact, as we said, and I'm not, again, I'll say just because initially, I'm not trying to say downplay the impact of the construction. I'm not, but it will be temporary, and when it's there, it won't be above ground. It will not impact your view sheds. It won't do any of that. So.
And at the end of the 25 years, what happens?
At the end of the 25 years, the project has to put forward as part of its permitting process, a decommissioning fund, to take everything out, to remove everything about the project. Now, that may not be the best use of that, and I'm talking everything from the anchor, the mooring, right? It might be that. And so they might say that might be a benefit to the ecology, the area. And so, but we'll make sure that if the selection is to remove it, there will be funds there for that to happen. Yep.
Okay.
And that's every aspect of the project. It may not be the best interest. There might be other uses for a 34 kV line at the time, for the communities. So we should say that we'll make sure there's enough funds to remove all of the attributes of the project. But it may not be the choice. At that time, may not be to do that. Depending.
What's the anticipated lifespan of that cable?
Oh, you've got me on that one now.
Okay.
How long?
My work here is done.
I know, I'd have to ask one of my, that's a good one. How, I mean, it is great, much greater than the expected life of the facility,
Right.
multiples. But would need to understand, I'd have to ask, they surveyed, there's a lot of different things that happen to make sure that there's no losses or anything happening or any issues with the integrity of the cable.
Yeah, but
Excuse
I
me.
mean, if everything else was decommissioned and the cable was left in situ, what type of use might it, be used for? And it was just worth putting that out there.
Yeah, that would be something that probably more of a dialogue, with Central Maine Power,
Right.
et cetera, as to whether there's any benefit to their, to the system there with them. Probably not a residence. It's still a good amount of energy.
Right, yes.
Bob, can I ask a question about the cable routing? You'd mentioned or I heard that Murray Hill, cut across to Presley was on your cable route options that's on the NEAV website. Is that going to come essentially out of the village, let's say on School Street or whatever, and it's going to follow the route of 96 to the substation? Is that the plan?
Hi.
Yeah, so
No,
I'm sorry, make sure I'm correctly hearing the Murray Hill, where it was initially proposed, there was a lot of feedback from the communities, as to that they didn't want it, to come down that path, and then it will not.
Did not.
So will not, as proposed today, right? So that is the strong intent per the feedback that we received from the communities. I'm not sure if I'm fully answering your question though. Was there a second part of that?
So the idea is it's coming out, let's say by the fire station or whatever from Bigelow down the side street. It's going to run into 96 in the village.
So, or
Yes.
does it come out Bigelow's driveway and to 96?
Correct.
And
So-
then that's going to maintain or parallel 96 all the way to the substation.
So then that follows all the way down 96, across all of the conduit of 96 will run it all the way approximately 3.2 miles to the substation. Correct.
Do you have any previous experience with coordinated funding on previous projects where the offering that Aquaventus is putting on the table for the community benefits combined with DOT to assist in this theoretical, let's say pedestrian and bicycle right of way, or shoulders to the road as in other parts of the peninsula? Do you know about, or has there been any success in combining funding?
Yeah, I am familiar with, yes, and I think that we should not limit ourselves. So if it's anything about whether it's state or federal or matching funds, that you all come up with a project that could be whether it's sewers or anything that could be matching fund, or this could be used to have a bigger impact. We support that. We support that. We really want to make sure that the intent here is to do something meaningful to the communities, in the arena of health and safety. And if there's a better way, by matching funds or contributions, then we shouldn't rule that out.
So
But excuse me, let me restate that.
Yep.
The project would not,
Right.
Yeah.
DOT is interested in that. We've already talked with them about it. So, but that I think would be an agreement between the towns and DOT as opposed to Aquaventus.
No, you're spot on. Yes, it would.
Okay.
Highly likely that would be. Yeah.
So when they were developing whatever project and they're looking at the budget, they would reach out to
Yeah.
DOT, who has a community, they have a fund for community improvement. And everything that we talked about would fit in that.
there's a tremendous amount of funding that's got a narrow window available that's been and may potentially combine with alternative or sustainable energy such as this that would combine or in conjunction with DOT money. You know, they don't
Yeah.
want to fund the whole project to
Right.
widen, you know, to pave the shoulder all the way over,
Right.
less than pave the shoulder like it has, and like they're planning on 27. And it's possible that there's monies for this project type or category
Yeah.
to combine with DOT
From,
funds.
from whom?
Yes.
Yeah. The potential thing,
Okay,
I'm sorry, you finished?
State or federal monies. And I'm just curious if, because this is a sustainable energy project, if that doesn't yield grant money or federal or state funding that could assist DOT in accomplishing, doing something meaningful for the community from end to end on this cable routing.
Yeah. So there's two pieces of that I'd just like to briefly speak to. The first one I want to make it very clear is that from a project perspective, the bigger, you know, however we get the most impact in a positive manner, you know, we would not rule that out from a project. Number two, I think it's really important, and we've talked about this a couple of times, you know, with this group, is the understanding of the timing and the sequencing of the timing. You know, the community benefits are based, and I think Nell alluded to this earlier already in this call, you know, is driven by the financial investment decision to progress with the project. And so until that time that there is a financial investment decision to progress with the project, no one could count on those funds being there, right? So we can't, you know, we can keep in mind and entertain, and then when we get to the point that things are moving forward, but anything that we do would be contingent upon that financial investment decision. And if funds that are available this year, or depending on the cycle of which are available, they might have to be reassessed at a later date as to what's still available. So it's harder to make that connection today with the uncertainty, knowing that we couldn't commit to it, you know, until there would be no funds available until the financial investment decision. I hope that helps understand.
Yeah, when we know the stage of funding where the project is at, post permits or?
I'm sorry, when
when will you get to that point where you have that financial
When
commitment
do
to
we
move
know you
forward?
have the money?
Okay, when do we know the financial investment decision will be? Is the
Yes.
question, I believe? Yeah,
Yes.
okay, thank you. Pardon me. Yes, so, you know, I do not have a date, firm date at this point. The key driver is going to be getting to this point of understanding what is being permitted and what's going to be required. This update, this stage of getting to the project at the end of this year of the where and the how is critical, because we can't have an investment decision until all the permits are completed, all the tendering is completed, and all that work. So I'm just trying to put out there that it's going to be largely driven, you know, by the outcome of what we'll see at the end of this year. Now, at the end of this year, I'll be in a much better position to say, okay, with this is where we believe it's going to be fabricated. This is going to be assembled. This is where the turbine is going to go on it, and giving all the time and to get everything in place. You know, at that point, you know, it's going to be another year and a half from that point. I would say, imagine, you know, but I want to give you some information, is that when we make that decision, it's still going to be a good, you know, approximately 2 year, you know, year and a half, 2 years from that point, you know, until we see an investment decision. You think about it, sometime late 2024, early 2025, you know, with another year and a half, depending on the method for construction and putting in the ground. That's why I use that 2026, 2027, you know, time period as a rough of when this would be commercially operational. I hope that helps.
So commercially operational versus investment decision. So what would be the ballpark timing of investment decision?
So
Just
I'm sorry, I
again,
think
understanding it's a guesstimate, but just
it sure is. Yeah. And let me try to say that again. Maybe yeah, maybe I was using too many. So if let's try it a different way. Let's back it away, right? So if you think about it, it's going to be roughly 2026, 2027 to be commercially operational, all right?
Yeah.
So it's roughly going to be 2 years, roughly, before, before that, for construction and all the work that has to happen, for that to work. So that puts us in late 2024, early 2025 for like a commercial operation date. I mean, I'm sorry, financial investment.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay, yep.
We're
just
talking,
wanted-
we're painting with a big brush. My apologies. I want to give you some information, to understand what we know, but it really is critical of knowing where, and how is going to be, it will run the schedule. Trust me. Yeah.
Yep, okay. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. It's 4 after 6. So we planned for an hour. Does anybody have any last questions before we call it a day for today?
You said the next meeting's
Is
July.
July 20th. Yep. And it'll be here again, which probably won't be a classroom then. So,
Hopefully it'll be really packed.
yeah, hopefully it will be really packed. So, and I appreciate everybody here. It's good to see so many people and new faces, so.
And I know you,
But it just
I'm sorry,
seems
Nell.
like a real win-win in so many ways, especially looking toward doing something with the ditch they're already going to be digging.
Right.
That's a savings toward, but I just think even given that time frame, it wouldn't hurt to start getting some estimates on what it would then cost for the towns.
So we've done some of that work
Yeah,
with DOT,
Okay, good.
but that we want community input about the options before we pick one.
Right.
So while that has been the one that's easiest to discuss, there are other options on the table, and community people may have additional ideas. So,
Sure. I just think it might help to make the decision on that if we knew what the cost
yep,
was.
and we have that
know,
information on a
So,
matrix. So
Okay, good.
I'll do my best to put that out.
Perfect. Thank you.
It's-
Sorry.
it's
Yeah, I didn't
available
mean to
on
hold
a-
up the
on a-
meeting Ending.
It's available on Google Drive. So if you email and say, hey, can I get a copy of the matrix? We can give you a link to it. Okay.
Basically, is it somewhat affordable? Never mind.
Yeah, some things are affordable and some things not
I
so
heard
much.
a selectman say it cost the town $500,000 just to do the sidewalk from the YMCA.
Which is why there would be no sidewalk with it. It would just be a paved shoulder.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that has all been taken into
I
account.
see. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
All right, Rob, we will let you go, and hopefully, will we see you in July?
I will be one day back from Alaska, I believe.
Okay, well,
Yes,
hopefully
plenty
your
of vac-
travel goes smoothly and you have a fabulous time.
Just putting that out there. I think it is the day I'm back from Alaska with my
Okay.
family. So we should be good. 20th.
Yeah,
Thank
and,
you
you
everyone
know-
so much. I appreciate very good questions. I really enjoyed this. This was a good session.
And I went
All right,
upstairs.
thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Yep,
Okay.
bye-bye.
Cheers.